My name is Dalton, and at 38 years old, I never imagined I would face the ultimate betrayal from my own parents. For 12 years, I raised my daughter Emma alone, watching her save every penny for college. When my parents told her they needed emergency surgery money, she gave them her entire $42,000 college fund without hesitation. 1 week later, I discovered the truth. They gifted $37,000 to my niece instead. No screaming. No scene. I took action. What happened next changed our family forever. Before I continue this painful story, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe to join us in processing family betrayals that cut deeper than any knife. Being a single dad was never part of my life plan. When my wife Natalie walked out 12 years ago, leaving me with our 6-year-old daughter, I was completely lost. Emma barely understood what was happening when her mother chose a new life in Europe over being a parent. The divorce papers arrived 3 months later. And just like that, it was just the two of us against the world. Those early years were brutal. I worked as an architectural draftsman during the day and took online courses at night to advance my career. Most evenings, Emma would sit beside me at the kitchen table, coloring quietly while I studied. We developed a routine and slowly built our new normal. By the time she started middle school, I had secured a better position at a respected firm in town, which meant more stability and better hours. Emma grew into an incredible young woman despite the challenges. She inherited my analytical mind, but thankfully got her artistic talents from somewhere else in the family tree. Throughout high school, she maintained a 3.9 GPA while working weekends at the local bookstore. Her dream was crystal clear: become a pediatrician. She wanted to help children, and nothing could deter her from this path. The college fund started small. When Emma was 7, I opened a dedicated savings account with just $500, a significant amount for us back then. Over the years, we both contributed to it. Birthday money, my annual bonuses, her bookstore paychecks, all went into the fund. When she was 14, we received an unexpected boost. Natalie had maintained a life insurance policy, naming Emma as beneficiary, and when she died in a car accident in Italy, $15,000 was added to the college fund. By the time Emma turned 18 and was preparing for college, the fund had grown to $42,000. It wouldn't cover everything, of course. Medical school is astronomically expensive, but Emma had secured a partial scholarship to State University for her undergraduate studies. The money would cover most of her bachelor's degree, allowing her to graduate with minimal debt before tackling medical school. My parents, Richard and Elaine, had always been a complicated presence in our lives. When Natalie left, they were initially supportive, helping with childcare when my work schedule got chaotic. As Emma grew older, they developed a special bond with her. She would spend weekends at their house once a month, baking cookies with Grandma Elaine and learning woodworking from Grandpa Richard. They attended her school performances and science fairs, beaming with pride when she collected awards. My relationship with them, however, remained strained. They never approved of Natalie and made sure I knew they had warned me about her. They criticized my parenting decisions regularly, suggesting I was too lenient, too strict, or simply doing it wrong. I tolerated their judgment for Emma's sake, swallowing my pride during family gatherings and holiday meals. My younger sister, Melissa, had a different experience with our parents. The golden child from birth, she received unwavering support and approval. When she announced her pregnancy at 19, our parents rallied around her, helping her finish college while raising baby Harper. They paid for childcare, bought her a car, and eventually helped with the down payment on her first house. I never begrudged her this support, but the contrast with my own situation was sometimes difficult to ignore. Harper, now 19, grew up essentially as Emma's cousin and friend. The girls got along well, despite being raised in very different circumstances. While Emma worked part-time jobs and saved diligently, Harper received a new car for her 16th birthday and took expensive dance classes paid for by my parents. Again, I never resented this. But I did notice how my parents seemed to have different standards for their two granddaughters. Despite these complex dynamics, I maintained hope that we were all doing our best. Emma was thriving academically and emotionally. She had been accepted to her dream program at State University, with plans to start in the fall semester. The college fund was secure. Her scholarships were in place, and I had even started renovating our spare bedroom as a dedicated study space for when she came home on breaks. Life seemed to be on track. Emma and I spent that spring visiting the campus, buying dorm supplies, and planning her course schedule. Her excitement was contagious, and I found myself daydreaming about attending her white coat ceremony years in the future. My daughter, the doctor. It felt like all our sacrifices were finally paying off. Little did I know that this period of hope and anticipation was about to come crashing down in the most painful way possible, orchestrated by the very people who should have been protecting Emma's future alongside me. The first sign that something was off came in late April, about 4 months before Emma was set to start college. My parents began calling her directly multiple times a week, which was unusual. Typically, they maintained a steady rhythm of Sunday evening calls and monthly visits. Suddenly, they were calling on Tuesday afternoons, Thursday mornings, and random times in between. At first, I thought nothing of it. Emma was their only granddaughter from my side, and her high school graduation was approaching. Maybe they were just excited about this milestone or wanted to plan something special. But then I noticed how these calls always seemed to end abruptly when I entered the room. One evening, I walked into the kitchen to find Emma quickly wiping away tears. When I asked what was wrong, she mumbled something about being emotional about graduation and quickly changed the subject. My daughter and I had always been close, sharing everything from minor disappointments to major life decisions. This sudden secretiveness felt wrong, but I respected her privacy and didn't push. A week later, Emma approached me with questions about her college fund. She wanted to know exactly where the money was kept, whose name was on the account, and how she could access it if needed. These were reasonable questions for an 18-year-old preparing for college. But something about her tone seemed off. She was too casual, too careful, as though rehearsing lines from a script. The money is in a 529 plan, I explained. It is in your name, but I am the custodian until you turn 21. If you need to withdraw funds, we would do it together for qualified educational expenses. Why do you ask? Just wondering, she replied, not meeting my eyes. Grandma and Grandpa were asking about my financial plans for college. That was the first real red flag. My parents had never shown much interest in the practical aspects of Emma's education. They praised her accomplishments, but left the financial planning entirely to me. Why would they suddenly be inquiring about her college fund? The next day, I overheard a fragment of a phone conversation as Emma sat on our back porch. Are you sure there are no other options? She was saying, her voice tight with worry. That sounds really serious. Yes, I understand. I wish I could help more. When she came inside, I casually asked who she had been talking to. She hesitated before answering. Grandma. She was just checking in. About graduation. That evening, I called my mother directly. Mom, is everything okay? Emma seemed upset after your call today. There was a pause before she answered. Oh, everything is fine, dear. Just some minor health concerns with your father. Nothing for you to worry about. Health concerns? What kind of health concerns? I pressed. Just some tests the doctor wants to run. Probably nothing, but you know how these things go at our age. The conversation felt off, but I had no reason to disbelieve her. My father was 72, and routine health scares were not uncommon at his age. Still, something nagged at me. The next morning, I called my father directly. Dad, Mom mentioned you're having some health issues. Anything I should know about? His response came too quickly, too rehearsed. Just some minor stuff, son. The doctor is being cautious. I have to go in for some scans next week. What kind of scans? What are they looking for? I asked. Oh, you know, the usual. Heart, lungs, that sort of thing. He changed the subject quickly, asking about my work projects. That afternoon, Emma received another call from my parents. This time, she took it in her bedroom with the door closed. When she emerged an hour later, her eyes were red and puffy. Grandpa might need surgery, she blurted out when I asked what was wrong. They found something on his tests. My stomach tightened. What kind of surgery? What did they find? Emma looked uncomfortable. I don't know all the details. Grandma just said it was serious. And they're worried about the costs. Since their insurance might not cover experimental procedures, this made even less sense. My parents had excellent retirement health coverage. My father had been an executive at a pharmaceutical company, and their benefits were comprehensive. Experimental procedures? It sounded strange. Over the next 2 weeks, Emma received daily calls from my parents. Each time, she emerged looking more worried than before. I tried calling them multiple times, but they were suddenly too busy to talk in depth, always rushing off the phone with vague excuses. Finally, I decided to take a more direct approach. My parents had the same family doctor they had been seeing for decades, Dr. Martin Feldman. I had known him since childhood, and while patient confidentiality would prevent him from sharing specific details, I thought he might at least confirm whether my father was actually scheduled for any procedures. Dr. Feldman's office. How can I help you? The receptionist answered. Hi, this is Dalton Mitchell, Richard Mitchell's son. I understand my father is scheduled for some tests or possibly surgery, and I wanted to see if there's anything the family needs to prepare for. There was a pause. Let me check our records, Mr. Mitchell. After a moment, she returned to the line. I don't see any upcoming appointments for your father beyond his annual physical in October. He was in 3 months ago for a routine checkup, and everything was normal according to Dr. Feldman's notes. My blood ran cold. No tests? No surgical consultations? No, sir. Nothing on our calendar, and no referrals to specialists in our system. I thanked her and hung up, my mind racing. What game were my parents playing? Why would they tell Emma about medical issues that didn't exist? And why all the sudden interest in her financial situation? That night, I called my sister Melissa. Hey, have Mom and Dad mentioned anything to you about Dad having health problems? Possibly needing surgery? What? No. She sounded genuinely surprised. I had dinner with them last Sunday, and they were talking about their cruise plans for the fall. Dad was excited about golfing in Hawaii. He seemed perfectly fine. The pieces weren't fitting together, and a sickening feeling was growing in my stomach. Something was very wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly what. All I knew was that my parents were lying about my father's health, and somehow, it connected to Emma's college fund. That night, I lay awake for hours, replaying conversations and searching for clues. By morning, I was exhausted but determined to get to the bottom of whatever was happening. I couldn't shake the feeling that my daughter was being manipulated, and as her father, it was my job to protect her, even if it meant confronting my own parents. The situation exploded on a Tuesday afternoon in early May. I returned home from work early, planning to surprise Emma with tickets to her favorite band playing in the city that weekend. When I entered the house, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at her laptop. Emma, everything okay? I asked, setting down my keys. She looked up, her expression a mixture of guilt and distress. Dad, I need to tell you something. The tone of her voice sent alarm bells ringing in my head. I sat down across from her, bracing myself. I withdrew the money from my college fund yesterday, she said quietly. All of it. For a moment, I couldn't process what she was saying. You? What? How? Why would you do that? Emma's eyes filled with tears. Grandma and Grandpa need it. Grandpa's surgery isn't covered by insurance. They said it's experimental and costs nearly $40,000 if he doesn't get it soon. Her voice broke. They said he could die. Dad, the room seemed to tilt around me. Emma, that is not possible. You cannot withdraw from that account without my signature. As the custodian, she wiped her eyes. We set up the account differently last year, remember? When I turned 18, we changed it so I could access it for college expenses. You said it would be easier when I was at school. She was right. We had modified the account structure after her 18th birthday, planning ahead for her college needs. I never imagined she would empty it without discussing it with me first. Where is the money now? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. I transferred it to Grandma and Grandpa yesterday. They needed it right away to schedule the surgery. I took a deep breath, trying to organize my thoughts. Emma, I called their doctor last week. Your grandfather is not scheduled for any surgery. There are no test results, no experimental procedures, nothing. Emma stared at me in confusion. That is not possible. They showed me the medical bills. Grandpa has been seeing specialists for months. Did you actually see medical documents with his name on them? From an actual hospital? Her certainty wavered. Well, no. But why would they lie about something like this? Why indeed? I pulled out my phone and dialed my father's number. No answer. I tried my mother's phone. Straight to voicemail. I sent text messages to both. Need to talk to you immediately about Dad's surgery and Emma's college fund. Over the next 3 hours, I made 15 calls to my parents. Not one was answered. I left increasingly urgent voicemails and sent multiple texts. Nothing. 8, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2. Emma watched me with growing concern. Dad, you are scaring me. What is going on? I didn't want to voice my suspicions without proof, but the silence from my parents was damning. I don't know yet, I told her. But we are going to find out. I decided to drive to their house, which was about 40 minutes away. Emma insisted on coming with me, her face pale with worry. The entire drive, I tried to come up with innocent explanations for what was happening. Maybe there was a miscommunication. Maybe they were at a doctor's appointment right now. Maybe their phones were both broken simultaneously. Deep down, I knew better. When we arrived at their suburban home, the driveway was empty. No cars in sight. I used my emergency key to enter, calling out as we stepped inside. The house was immaculate, but eerily quiet. Mail had been collected from the slot. Plants had been watered, but there was no sign of my parents. Emma wandered into the kitchen while I checked the bedrooms. Dad, she called. There is a note on the refrigerator. The handwritten note was brief. Gone to visit cousin Linda in Phoenix. Back in 2 weeks. Water the plants if you stop by. Cousin Linda? Emma looked confused. I thought she died last year. She was right. My mother's cousin Linda had passed away from breast cancer the previous summer. We had all attended the funeral. I stepped onto the front porch and rang the doorbell of their next-door neighbor, Mrs. Winters, who had lived there for decades. "Oh, Dalton," she exclaimed. "How nice to see you. How is Emma doing with her college plans?" "Fine. Thanks. I am actually looking for my parents." "Have you seen them recently?" "Oh, yes. They left yesterday." Richard was loading suitcases into the car. Elaine mentioned something about a vacation. They seemed quite excited. Did they mention where they were going? I believe Elaine said something about a cruise. Caribbean, I think? Or was it Mediterranean? My memory is not what it used to be. A vacation. A cruise. Not emergency surgery. not life-or-death medical treatments. Back in the car, Emma was frantically trying to call her grandparents. They must have been confused, she kept saying. Maybe there is another explanation. I didn't have the heart to tell her what I was now almost certain of. Her grandparents had deliberately lied to her to get their hands on her college fund. But why? What could possibly motivate them to steal their own granddaughter's future? On the way home, I called Melissa again. Have you heard from Mom and Dad today? I asked without preamble. No, not since Sunday dinner. Why? Because they told Emma that Dad needs emergency surgery that insurance won't cover. She gave them her entire college fund yesterday. And now they are apparently on a cruise. There was a long silence. That cannot be right, Melissa finally said. Mom mentioned they were planning a trip, but nothing about Dad needing surgery. Are you sure you understood correctly? Emma transferred $42,000 to them yesterday. Now, they are not answering their phones. Their neighbor says they left for a vacation, and their doctor has no record of any health issues. What would you conclude? Another pause. I will try calling them and get back to you. By the time we arrived home, Emma was in tears, the full weight of what might have happened beginning to sink in. Why would they do this to me? She kept asking. They know how hard I worked for that money. They know what it means for medical school. I had no answers for her. Only a growing sense of rage that I fought to contain. Whatever was happening, losing my temper wouldn't help. We needed facts. And we needed a plan. That evening, Melissa called back. I cannot reach them either, she admitted. But this doesn't make sense. Why would they need Emma's money? They are comfortable in retirement. Dad's pension is generous, and they have significant savings. I don't know, I replied. But I intend to find out. As I hung up, Emma sat beside me on the couch, her college acceptance letter clutched in her hands. What am I going to do about school now? She whispered. The devastation in her voice broke my heart. We will figure it out, I promised her, though I had no idea how. One way or another, you will go to college. First, let us focus on getting your money back. That night, as Emma finally fell into an exhausted sleep, I sat at my computer researching financial fraud within families. What I discovered was both disturbing and enlightening. This kind of exploitation happened more often than I had realized, and the legal remedies were complicated by family relationships. Easy and Hubasind, I created a folder and began documenting everything: dates of phone calls, bank transfer details, text messages, the conflicting stories. If this was heading where I suspected, we would need every scrap of evidence. The next morning brought no messages from my parents, but something else arrived that would blow the situation wide open and confirm my worst fears. I was scrolling through my Facebook feed during lunch break when a post from my sister Melissa stopped me cold. It had been uploaded that morning, showing several photos of a celebration at my parents' country club. The caption read, "So proud of Harper for getting into Westlake University. Thanks to Grandma and Grandpa for their incredibly generous gift to make this dream possible." The photos showed my niece Harper beaming beside an enormous check in the amount of $37,000, held by my smiling parents. There was a cake decorated with Westlake's colors, floral arrangements, and champagne glasses raised in toast. My parents looked ecstatic. Nothing like people facing a medical emergency. My hands shook as I zoomed in on the photos. The date stamp showed they were taken just 2 days after Emma had transferred her college fund to my parents. 2 days. They hadn't even waited a week before using her money to fund a celebration for their other granddaughter. Westlake University was a prestigious private college known for its excellent business program, Harper's chosen field. It was also notoriously expensive, with annual tuition approaching $50,000. My sister Melissa earned a good living as a pharmaceutical sales representative, but not enough to easily cover those costs without significant financial aid or family support. I immediately called Emma, who was at her part-time job at the bookstore. I need you to come home as soon as your shift ends, I told her, trying to keep my voice steady. There's something you need to see. Is it about Grandma and Grandpa? Did they call? No, but I found out where your money went. We'll talk when you get home. The 3 hours until Emma's shift ended were some of the longest of my life. I continued gathering evidence, taking screenshots of Melissa's post and the comments beneath it, where my parents had written, "Anything for our precious granddaughter. Westlake is lucky to get her." When Emma finally arrived home, I sat her down at the kitchen table and showed her the Facebook post. She stared at the images in silence, her face draining of color. "That is $37,000, she finally said, her voice barely audible. "From my $42,000. They took my college fund and gave it to Harper." "It looks that way," I confirmed gently. "But why? Harper's mom has money. You always said Aunt Melissa does really well. And I thought Westlake gave Harper a scholarship? A partial scholarship," I clarified. "Not enough to cover everything. But that doesn't excuse what they did, Emma. They lied to you. They manipulated you. They stole from you." Emma's shock was quickly morphing into something else. Rage. "They made me think Grandpa was dying. Do you know how scared I was? How many nights I cried thinking about losing him?" Her voice rose. "And all for what? So Harper could go to a fancy private school instead of state like me?" I had never seen my daughter so angry, and with good reason. The betrayal was staggering in its callousness. "We need to call Aunt Melissa," Emma insisted. "She has to know where this money came from." I hesitated. "Are you sure? This could create a major rift in the family." "The rift is already there, Dad. They chose Harper over me. I want Aunt Melissa to know what her parents did." I respected her decision and dialed my sister's number, putting the phone on speaker. "Melissa, did you know where the money for Harper's Westlake tuition came from?" I asked, without preamble, when she answered. "Mom and Dad gave it to her as a graduation gift," she replied, sounding confused by my tone. "Why?" "That money was Emma's college fund. They told her that Dad needed emergency surgery and insurance wouldn't cover it. They manipulated her into giving them her entire savings, and then they turned around and gave $37,000 of it to Harper." There was a stunned silence. "That cannot be true," Melissa finally said, her voice uncertain. "Check your Facebook post from this morning," I instructed. "Look at the check they are holding. $37,000. Emma transferred $42,000 to them 3 days ago, after weeks of them telling her Dad might die without this experimental procedure." "Oh my God," Melissa whispered. "Harper had no idea. I had no idea. They told us they had been saving for her education since she was born." "Well, they lied to you too," I said flatly. "They stole from Emma to give to Harper." "I will call them right now," Melissa said, sounding horrified. "This is completely unacceptable. Harper would never want money that was taken from Emma." After hanging up, Emma sat in stunned silence, staring at the Facebook photos. "I always knew they favored Harper," she said finally. "But I never thought they would do something like this." "Neither did I admitted. "I knew they could be manipulative. But this crosses every line." Within the hour, Melissa called back, her voice tight with anger. I finally reached Mom. When I confronted her, she said they did what they thought was best for both girls. Her voice shook with disgust. Apparently, since Harper got into Westlake, a real university, as Mom put it, she deserved the financial support more than Emma, who is just going to state. "Just going to state?" Emma exclaimed, outrage coloring her voice. "I got a merit scholarship to state. I chose it specifically for their pre-med program." "I know," Melissa said. Mom's reasoning is absolutely ridiculous. She also had the nerve to say that Emma has you, while Harper only has me. since I am a single mom too, as if that justifies stealing. Did they acknowledge it was stealing? I asked. Number mom insisted they were redistributing family resources where they would do the most good. She actually said those words. Dad refused to come to the phone. Emma looked devastated. So they think I do not deserve my own money? That Harper's education is more important than mine? Apparently, Melissa said grimly. But Harper and I disagree completely. She is mortified and wants no part of this. We will figure out another way to handle her tuition. After the call ended, Emma and I sat in stunned silence. The confirmation of what my parents had done was somehow worse than the suspicion. They had made a calculated decision to prioritize one granddaughter over the other, using deception and emotional manipulation to steal money that represented years of Emma's hard work and sacrifice. What do we do now? Emma finally asked, her voice small. Now, I said, my resolve hardening. We fight back. They might be family, but what they did was wrong, possibly even illegal, and we are going to make it right. The next morning, I called in sick to work and made an appointment with Patricia Ramirez, an attorney specializing in financial fraud. As Emma and I sat in her office detailing what had happened, the attorney's expression grew increasingly grave. This is a clear case of fraud and elder financial exploitation in reverse, Patricia explained. They used deception to obtain funds under false pretenses. The fact that they are your parents and her grandparents actually makes the case stronger, not weaker, because they exploited a position of trust. What are our options? I asked. We start with a formal demand letter for the return of the full amount. If they fail to comply, we can file civil charges. Given the amount involved, criminal charges could also be on the table, though most prosecutors are reluctant to pursue those in family situations, unless absolutely necessary. Emma spoke up. I do not want to send my grandparents to jail. I just want my college money back. Patricia nodded understandingly. The demand letter usually resolves these situations. No one wants this kind of family dispute to become public record. As we left the attorney's office, Emma looked both relieved and troubled. Do you think they will actually return the money? She asked. They will if they have any sense, I replied. Because I am not backing down, and neither should you. What they did was not just unfair, it was cruel. And actions have consequences, even for grandparents. The emotional impact of the betrayal was hitting Emma in waves. That evening, she sat on our back porch, flipping through old photo albums, full of pictures with her grandparents, birthdays, holidays, fishing trips with Grandpa, baking sessions with Grandma. I thought they loved me, she said when I joined her. How could they do this? If they loved me, I had no good answer. The question had been haunting me as well. How could my own parents, who had watched Emma grow up, who had seemingly adored her, deliberately sabotage her future? What kind of love was conditional on academic prestige or family status? As night fell, Emma made a decision. I want to confront them in person, she declared. Not just through lawyers. I want to look them in the eyes and ask them why they thought my future was worth sacrificing. I nodded slowly. If that is what you need, we will make it happen. But first, let us make sure the legal process is underway. Your education cannot wait for family reconciliation. The next day, Patricia's office sent a formal demand letter by courier to my parents' home. It outlined the fraud in clear terms and demanded the return of the full $42,000 within 10 business days, or legal proceedings would commence. The letter was delivered by a professional process server, a woman who would later tell us that when my parents opened that envelope on their front porch, their faces went from confusion to shock, to outrage in the space of seconds. And then, they began to scream. After the demand letter was delivered, the real work began. I took a systematic approach to the crisis, determined to secure Emma's future regardless of how my parents responded. First on the agenda was a meeting with State University's financial aid office. "I understand this is an unusual situation," I explained to Miranda Jeffries, the assistant director of financial aid. "My daughter's college fund was essentially stolen. We are pursuing legal remedies. But in the meantime, we need to explore all options to ensure she can start in the fall, as planned." Miranda was surprisingly understanding. "Unfortunately, these family financial situations are more common than you might think. Let me see what we can do." She reviewed Emma's file, noting her excellent academic record and existing merit scholarship. There are a few emergency assistance programs she might qualify for, and we could restructure her financial aid package with more loans. Not ideal, but it would allow her to start on time. Emma, sitting beside me, nodded gratefully. "I am willing to take on more loans if necessary. I cannot delay my education." We left with a modified financial plan that would cover her first semester. It included more debt than we had wanted, but it was a start. In the parking lot, Emma hugged me tightly. "Thank you for fighting for me, Dad. Always," I promised. "Now, let us see what else we can do." My next step was meeting with my own financial advisor, Anthony Reeves. I laid out the situation frankly, asking what assets I could leverage to help cover the shortfall. "You could take a home equity line of credit," he suggested. "Rates are reasonable right now. Or you could withdraw from your own retirement accounts, though that comes with penalties I would not recommend." "What about a personal loan?" I asked. "Possible, but the interest rates would be higher than the HELOC. Let me run some numbers for you." While Anthony worked on options, I contacted several private scholarship foundations with late application deadlines. Emma spent evenings writing additional essays and gathering letters of recommendation from teachers who were outraged on her behalf. Meanwhile, Patricia Ramirez was building our legal case. She had drafted a comprehensive complaint that could be filed in court if my parents failed to respond to the demand letter. "The evidence is compelling," she assured us. "The timeline of their deception, the bank transfers, the social media posts about Harper's gift, all of it creates a clear picture of fraud." She also advised me to document any further contact with my parents. "Record phone calls if your state allows it. Save all text messages and emails. If they make any admissions or threats, we want that on record." My parents finally broke their silence 3 days after receiving the demand letter. My phone rang at 8:30 p.m., my father's name flashing on the screen. I put it on speaker so Emma could hear, and started a recording app as Patricia had advised. "What the hell do you think you are doing?" my father shouted without preamble. "Sending lawyers after your own parents? Have you lost your mind?" "I am trying to recover Emma's stolen college fund," I replied calmly. "The money you took under false pretenses about needing emergency surgery." "We did not steal anything," he blustered. "Emma offered to help us. That money is already spent anyway. Harper needs it for Westlake." Emma, who had been listening silently, spoke up. "You lied to me, Grandpa. You made me think you were dying." There was a pause. "Emma, are you there too?" My father's tone changed, becoming cajoling. "Sweetheart, you have to understand. Harper got into a prestigious university. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for her. Your father can help with your school. Melissa does not have those resources. So you decided to steal from me instead?" Emma's voice was steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "You pretended to be sick. You manipulated me. You knew exactly what that money meant to me. We were going to pay you back eventually." My mother's voice cut in, apparently on another extension. "This is just a loan until Harper graduates." "That is not what you told Harper or Melissa," I pointed out. "You presented it as a gift. There was no mention of it being Emma's money or needing to be repaid. Why are you doing this to us?" my mother demanded. "After everything we have done for you and Emma over the years?" I am not doing anything to you, I replied. I am protecting my daughter from the people who betrayed her trust. You have 10 days from when you received the letter to return the money. Otherwise, we will be pursuing legal action. You would sue your own parents? My father sounded incredulous. You would steal from your own granddaughter? I countered. The call devolved from there, with my parents alternating between anger, guilt trips, and vague threats about family repercussions. Emma remained remarkably composed. Even when my mother suggested she was being dramatic about needing the money. State is not even a real university compared to Westlake, my mother said dismissively. Harper is going into business. She needs the connections a good school provides. Your community college medical program will be fine without this money. Emma's jaw dropped. State has one of the best pre-med programs in the region. And it is not a community college. After we hung up, Emma sat in stunned silence. They really think Harper deserves my money more than I do. They actually believe that. Their warped perspective doesn't change the facts, I assured her. What they did was wrong, period. And we are going to make it right. The next day, Patricia advised us to proceed with filing the complaint, rather than waiting for the full 10 days to elapse. Their response shows they have no intention of returning the money voluntarily. We need to increase the pressure. With our authorization, she filed the complaint with the county court, naming my parents as defendants in a civil fraud case. The local newspaper's court reporter picked up the filing, resulting in a brief mention in the legal notices section. Mitchell v. www. Mitchell. Civil complaint alleges elder family members defrauded granddaughter of college funds exceeding $40,000. Small as it was, that public notice had an immediate effect. My phone began ringing with calls from extended family members, most of whom had seen Melissa's Facebook post about Harper's gift but now wondered about its true source. My Aunt Rebecca, my father's sister, was particularly upset. Richard and Elaine did what? To Emma's college fund? That poor girl worked so hard for that money. I explained the situation as factually as possible, avoiding emotional language. By the end of our conversation, Aunt Rebecca was firmly on our side. I am calling your father right now. This is absolutely shameful behavior. Similar calls came from cousins, my mother's brother, and even their pastor. The family network that my parents had always cultivated was now becoming a source of overwhelming pressure as the truth spread. Melissa, true to her word, was standing with us as well. She and Harper came to our house for dinner 5 days after the complaint was filed. Both clearly distressed by the situation. We had no idea where that money came from. Harper assured Emma tearfully, I would never have accepted it if I had known. I am so sorry, Emma. Emma hugged her cousin. I know you would not. This is not your fault. Harper turned to me. Uncle Dalton, I want to return the money they gave me. All of it. I can apply for more student loans, or maybe defer for a year to work. That is very honorable of you, Harper. I told her sincerely. But this is between us and your grandparents. They took the money, and they need to make it right. Melissa nodded in agreement. Mom and Dad need to face the consequences of what they did. Harper and I have already decided she will not be using any of that money. We have put it in a separate account until this is resolved. Their support meant everything to Emma, who had been worried about damaging her relationship with her cousin. Instead, the ordeal seemed to be bringing the two girls closer together. Meanwhile, Patricia informed us that the court had set a preliminary hearing date for our case. This is moving quickly, which is good for us, she explained. The judge assigned to the case has a strong record on financial fraud cases. My parents hired their own attorney, Alan Berkowitz, who reached out to Patricia with a settlement offer. $20,000 returned immediately, with the rest to be paid in monthly installments over 5 years, with no interest. That is not acceptable, I told Patricia when she presented the offer. Emma needs the full amount now for her education, not in 5 years. And there should be interest and penalties for what they did, Patricia nodded. I will counter with a demand for the full amount, plus legal fees, to be paid within 30 days. As negotiations continued, we received unexpected support from Emma's high school. Her guidance counselor, learning of the situation, connected us with a local foundation that offered emergency scholarships to students facing financial hardship. Emma's academic record and the unusual circumstances of her case made her an ideal candidate. We can offer $8,000 for her first year. The foundation director explained. It is not the full amount, but combined with her merit scholarship and the adjusted financial aid package, it could make the difference. Emma was overwhelmed by the generosity. I promise I will make the most of this opportunity, she told the director. And someday, I will contribute to the foundation to help other students in similar situations. 10 days after filing the complaint, Patricia called with news. Your parents' attorney has requested a meeting. They want to discuss settling this out of court. What changed their minds? I asked. 2 things, from what I gather. First, the family pressure has been intense. Second, their attorney likely advised them that they have very little chance of winning in court. The evidence against them is overwhelming. The meeting was scheduled for the following day at Patricia's office. As Emma and I prepared to face my parents across a conference table, I reminded her to stay calm and focused. This is not about punishing them, I told her. It is about securing your future. Keep that goal in mind. She nodded, squaring her shoulders. I am ready. What happened in that meeting would determine not just Emma's educational future, but the future of our entire family dynamic. The wounds inflicted by my parents' betrayal ran deep, but addressing them head-on was the only path forward. The conference room at Patricia Ramirez's law office felt unnaturally quiet as we waited for my parents to arrive. Emma sat beside me, her posture rigid, a legal pad, with carefully prepared notes in front of her. Patricia arranged documents on the table, occasionally glancing at her watch. At exactly 10 a.m., the receptionist announced their arrival. My father entered first. His normally commanding presence diminished somehow. My mother followed, her eyes darting around the room before settling on Emma, with an expression that mixed defiance and guilt. Their attorney, Alan Berkowitz, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit, completed the trio. Thank you all for agreeing to this meeting. Patricia began formally. We are here to discuss the resolution of a serious matter involving the fraudulent acquisition of Emma Mitchell's college fund in the amount of $42,000. My father bristled at the word fraudulent but remained silent when his attorney placed a restraining hand on his arm. My clients are prepared to discuss a reasonable settlement, Berkowitz stated. They maintain that there was no fraudulent intent, merely a misunderstanding about the nature of the financial arrangement. Emma's pen snapped in her hand. A misunderstanding? She said, her voice quiet but intense. You told me Grandpa was dying. You said he needed experimental surgery that insurance would not cover. You made me cry myself to sleep thinking I might lose him. That was not a misunderstanding. That was a deliberate lie. My mother leaned forward. Emma, sweetheart, you are blowing this out of proportion. We never said your grandfather was dying. I have the text messages. Grandma, Emma replied, sliding her phone across the table. Right here. The doctors are not optimistic without this procedure. Your exact words. My father cleared his throat. Perhaps we got carried away in explaining the situation, but our intentions were good. Harper needed that money for a top-tier education, and I did not? Emma's voice remained steady. My education, my future, was less important to you? State University is not Westlake, my mother said dismissively. Harper is going into business. Connections matter in her field, and they do not matter in medicine? I interjected. Emma's dream of becoming a pediatrician is less valuable because she chose a public university with an excellent pre-med program, Berkowitz intervened. We are getting off track here. The issue is resolving the financial dispute, not debating the relative merits of different educational institutions. Patricia nodded. Agreed. My clients are seeking the full return of the $42,000, plus legal fees and interest. As we have explained, Berkowitz countered. My clients have already disbursed $37,000 to their other granddaughter. They are prepared to return the remaining $5,000 immediately and the rest in installments. That is not acceptable, Patricia stated firmly. The money was obtained through fraudulent means and must be returned in full. The fact that they chose to give it away does not negate their obligation. My father's face reddened. We do not have $42,000 sitting in our account. We cannot just magic it back. Emma, who had been quiet, spoke up again. What about the cruise you went on right after taking my money? The one where you posted pictures from the ship while I was panicking about how I would pay for college. My parents exchanged glances. That was prepaid months ago, my mother said weakly. And Harper's celebration at the country club? The cake, the champagne, the giant check presentation? Emma pressed. Was that prepaid too? The room fell silent. Finally, my father sighed heavily. What exactly do you want from us? I want my college fund back, Emma stated simply. All of it. And I want you to acknowledge what you did and apologize, not just to me but to Harper too. You put her in a terrible position, accepting money she did not know was stolen from her cousin. My mother's composure cracked slightly. We did not steal from you, Emma. We redistributed family resources to where they would do the most good. Those resources were not yours to redistribute, I pointed out. That money represented years of Emma's hard work, my contributions as her father, and even part of her mother's life insurance. You had no right to decide it should go to Harper instead. Berkowitz conferred quietly with my parents before addressing Patricia. My clients are prepared to return $20,000 immediately, and the remainder within 60 days. They would need to liquidate some investments to cover the full amount. Patricia looked to us. I turned to Emma, whose eyes remained fixed on her grandparents. Full amount, within 30 days, she said firmly, and a written apology. After more negotiation, we reached an agreement. The full $42,000 would be returned within 30 days, with a 10% penalty if the deadline was missed. My parents would provide a written apology to both Emma and Harper. In return, we would drop the lawsuit and sign a confidentiality agreement about the settlement terms. As the attorneys finalized the paperwork, Emma asked for a moment alone with her grandparents. Patricia looked concerned, but I nodded my approval, knowing my daughter needed this closure. The three of them moved to a small seating area in the corner of the conference room. I could not hear their conversation, but I watched as Emma spoke intently, her posture straight, her hands occasionally gesturing to emphasize a point. My parents mostly listened, my father looking at the floor, my mother repeatedly wiping her eyes. When they rejoined us, Emma's expression was resolute. I have said what I needed to say, she told me quietly. The meeting concluded with signatures and handshakes that felt empty of their usual meaning. As we prepared to leave, my father approached me. You did not have to take it this far, he said, his voice low. We are family. Yes, we are, I agreed. Which is why what you did was so unforgivable. You exploited Emma's love for you. You made her think she was saving your life, when really she was just funding Harper's tuition. Harper deserved that opportunity, he insisted. So did Emma. Both girls deserve support. Not just the one you decided was attending the right school. He had no response to that, and we parted without further words. Outside the office, Emma exhaled deeply. That was harder than I expected. You were amazing in there, I told her. Strong, clear, and dignified. I am so proud of you. Do you think they will actually pay it all back? They will, I assured her. The legal consequences, if they do not, are significant. And the family pressure is intense. Aunt Rebecca called me this morning to say she had offered to loan them money if needed to make this right. That evening, Melissa and Harper came over again. Harper was still distraught about the situation. "I feel terrible about all of this," she told Emma. "I already told Grandma and Grandpa I would not accept their gift, knowing where it came from." "What will you do about Westlake?" Emma asked. Harper sighed. "I have applied for additional loans and a work-study program. Mom is helping as much as she can. I might have to start at the local community college and transfer later. But that is okay. A degree is a degree, and I refuse to build my future on something taken from you." Melissa looked at me apologetically. "I still cannot believe our parents did this. I knew they favored Harper in some ways, but I never imagined they would go this far." "It is not your fault," I assured her. "You and Harper are as much victims in this as Emma and I are." Over the next few weeks, the consequences of my parents' actions rippled through the family. Extended relatives who had always looked up to them as the family patriarchs were shocked and disappointed. Their social standing in the community took a hit when rumors of the dispute circulated despite our confidentiality agreement. Harper made the difficult decision to defer her acceptance to Westlake and start at the community college. Planning to transfer after building up more savings and securing additional scholarships, she refused to benefit from what had happened to Emma, a stance that only highlighted my parents' poor judgment. 28 days after our meeting, a bank transfer for $42,000 appeared in Emma's college account. The following day, a registered letter arrived containing a carefully worded apology to both Emma and Harper. The language was formal and somewhat stilted, suggesting our attorney had helped draft it. But it was signed by both my parents. "Do you think they really mean it?" Emma asked after reading the letter. "I do not know," I admitted. "But they did what was legally required. The emotional reconciliation, if it happens at all, will take much longer." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "I am not ready to forgive them yet. Maybe someday, but not now." "That is completely understandable. Healing happens on your timeline, not theirs." With her college fund restored, Emma was able to finalize her plans for State University. The emergency scholarship from the local foundation had already been processed, so she decided to use that money for her textbooks and living expenses, reducing the amount she would need to borrow. My parents made no attempt to contact us directly in the weeks following the settlement. Through family grapevine, I heard they were giving us space and respecting our boundaries. Phrases that sounded suspiciously like they had consulted a therapist about the situation. Melissa reported that they were subdued at family gatherings, notably less boastful about Harper's accomplishments. Harper herself maintained a respectful distance from them, still processing her own feelings of betrayal at being unwittingly pulled into their scheme. The family dynamics had shifted permanently. What my parents had done could not be undone, and the trust they had broken could not be easily repaired. But life continued forward, as it always does, with new challenges and opportunities that demanded our attention more than past grievances. As Emma packed for college, carefully placing framed family photos in her suitcase, I noticed she included one of her with her grandparents from her high school graduation. When I raised an eyebrow, she shrugged. "They are still family," she said simply. "What they did was wrong, and I am not ready to have them in my life right now. But someday, maybe things will be different." Her maturity in the face of such betrayal was yet another reminder of the remarkable young woman she had become. Despite, or perhaps because of, the challenges she had faced. And as her father, I could not have been prouder of the way she had handled this painful chapter in our family's story. 3 months after the settlement, Emma was thriving in her first semester at State University. Her pre-med courses were challenging but engaging, and she had made friends with like-minded students in her dormitory. We spoke several times a week, and I could hear in her voice that the wound inflicted by her grandparents, while still present, was no longer consuming her thoughts. My parents had made several cautious attempts at reconciliation. First came birthday cards with modest checks enclosed, then invitations to Sunday dinners, that we politely declined. They sent care packages to Emma's dorm, filled with homemade cookies and study supplies. She acknowledged these gestures with brief thank you texts, but maintained her emotional distance. Harper had started classes at the community college, excelling in her business courses and working part-time at a local marketing firm for experience. She and Emma had grown closer through the ordeal, texting regularly and supporting each other's educational journeys. The cousins had found solidarity in navigating the complicated family dynamics that now defined our extended family. Melissa and I also strengthened our relationship, recognizing that our parents' behavior reflected their own flaws, not our worth as their children. We committed to breaking the cycle of favoritism and manipulation with the next generation, ensuring that both Emma and Harper felt equally valued and supported. One evening in late November, Emma called with unexpected news. Harper told me that Grandma and Grandpa reached out to her with an apology. A real one this time. Not the formal letter their lawyer made them write. They admitted they were wrong to take my money and wrong to put her in that position. That is a significant step, I acknowledged. How do you feel about that? Honestly, relieved. Not just for me, but for Harper. She has been carrying this guilt that was never hers to bear. And what about you? Are you any closer to forgiving them? Emma sighed. I am working on it. Dr. Collins, my psychology professor, talks about how forgiveness is not about excusing the behavior, but about freeing yourself from the burden of resentment. I am trying to get there. Her words reminded me of how much she had matured through this painful experience. At 18, she was grappling with complex emotional concepts that many adults struggle to master. In December, when Emma came home for winter break, we received an unexpected visit from Aunt Rebecca, who had been a steadfast ally throughout the ordeal. Your parents are truly remorseful, she told me as we sat in the living room. Richard has not been sleeping. Elaine has lost weight. They realize they violated a sacred trust, not just with Emma, but with the entire family. Remorse is a beginning, I acknowledged, but rebuilding trust takes time. They understand that, Rebecca assured us. They are not expecting immediate forgiveness. They just want a chance to make amends. Especially with Emma. Emma, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. I think I am ready to see them. Not alone, but maybe for lunch. Somewhere neutral. The lunch was arranged for the following week at a restaurant halfway between our homes. Emma and I arrived first, choosing a quiet corner table. When my parents entered, they looked older somehow, diminished by the weight of their actions. The conversation was initially awkward, filled with small talk about the weather and Emma's classes. But eventually, my father cleared his throat and addressed the elephant in the room. Emma, what we did to you was unforgivable, he said, his voice rough with emotion. We betrayed your trust in the worst possible way. We lied to you, manipulated you, and stole from you. There is no excuse for that. My mother reached across the table, not quite touching Emma's hand, but gesturing toward it. We have done a lot of soul-searching these past months. We convinced ourselves we were doing what was best for the family, but really, we were imposing our own biases and preferences. We valued prestige over integrity, appearances over reality. You made me feel like I did not matter, Emma said quietly. Like my dreams were less important than Harper's NSET. That was terribly wrong, my father acknowledged. Both of you girls deserve the same support and respect. We were blinded by outdated notions about which schools and careers carry more status. In doing so, we nearly destroyed our relationship with you, hurt Harper deeply, and damaged the entire family. What followed was a lengthy conversation about expectations, favoritism, and the true meaning of family support. My parents listened more than they spoke, truly hearing Emma's perspective perhaps for the first time. No magical reconciliation occurred that day. Emma did not fall into their arms with immediate forgiveness, but a door that had been firmly shut began to crack open, allowing for the possibility of a new relationship, one built on honesty and respect, rather than manipulation and control. Over the following months, my parents continued their efforts to make amends. They contributed to a scholarship fund at State University for students pursuing medical careers. They attended family gatherings with a new humility, no longer dominating conversations or making judgments about others' choices. They made genuine attempts to connect with Emma on her terms, showing interest in her studies and respecting her boundaries. For her part, Emma gradually allowed them back into her life. First, through occasional text messages, then video calls, and eventually in-person visits. The relationship was different now, more cautious but also more authentic. She no longer sought their approval, but accepted their support when it came without strings attached. 1 year after the settlement, Emma invited both sets of grandparents to a dinner at our home to celebrate her successful completion of her freshman year. As I watched her confidently share stories about her biology lab and her volunteer work at the campus medical center, I reflected on the profound lessons we had all learned through this painful journey. First, that love within families must be unconditional and equal, not based on accomplishments or conformity to expectations. My parents' preference for Harper had been a form of conditional love that ultimately harmed both girls. Second, that trust, once broken, can only be rebuilt through consistent actions over time, not through words or gestures alone. My parents were slowly earning back trust through sustained effort and genuine change. Third, that protecting boundaries sometimes requires difficult confrontations. By taking legal action against my own parents, I had demonstrated to Emma that her well-being was my highest priority, even when that meant challenging family expectations. And perhaps most importantly, that resilience comes from facing betrayal head-on, rather than denying or minimizing it. Emma had emerged from this experience stronger, more self-assured, and with a deeper understanding of both human frailty and human potential for growth. As the evening wound down, Emma pulled me aside. "Thank you, Dad," she said simply, "for fighting for me when I needed you most." "Always," I promised, just as I had done throughout this ordeal. Always. Later that night, after everyone had left, Emma and I sat on the back porch, looking at the stars. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "I am actually grateful, in a strange way." "Grateful? For what happened?" She nodded. "Not for what they did, but for what I learned. About myself, about family, about forgiveness. I am stronger now. I know my worth is not determined by others' judgment, and I know who truly has my back." Her words filled me with profound pride. My daughter had taken a terrible betrayal and transformed it into wisdom beyond her years. She had every right to remain bitter, to cut ties completely. But instead, she was choosing a path of cautious reconciliation while maintaining her self-respect. "I have 1 more year of pre-med," she continued, "and then, hopefully, medical school. There will be more challenges ahead, more difficult decisions, but I know I can face them now." "You can," I agreed, "and you will never face them alone." As we sat in comfortable silence, I reflected on the strange journey we had traveled. A theft that might have permanently fractured our family had instead led to deeper understanding, stronger boundaries, and more authentic relationships. The money had been returned, but the true restoration had been of Emma's confidence in herself and in her ability to overcome betrayal. Family relationships are complex, imperfect, and sometimes painful, but they can also be transformed through honesty, accountability, and the courage to demand better from those who claim to love us. Emma's college fund had been saved, but the most valuable gift from this ordeal was the knowledge that love, real love, does not take. It gives. It does not manipulate. It supports. It does not play favorites. It sees the unique value in each person. And that is a lesson worth more than any college fund. Have you ever experienced betrayal from family members who were supposed to protect you? How did you handle it? And what boundaries did you establish afterward? I would love to hear your stories in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to know they are not alone in facing family betrayal. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the family we choose is more reliable than the family we are born into. Take care of yourselves and each other.